Hmm. Mhm. So a pendulum affixed to a pendulum. That's interesting. No, like, physically? That's interesting. So are they I'm imagining that they're calculating into their model the effect of one pendulum on the other pendulum? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Okay. So it's yeah, I'm imagining that the swinging of the top pendulum becomes a lot more erratic. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Um, so okay, so kind of what we're talking about is once you attach, like, the more you attach this these different moving parts that have different states they could be in, the more chaos you create. Is that kind of what you're getting at here? Yeah. Yeah. Mm, mm, mhm. What is that one of the films? Okay. Was Now, did that film actually did it earn its name, do you think? Because you didn't watch it. Yeah. Well, so that's kind of part of this that interests me, right? Because okay, for example, and we see this a lot in movies and fiction of various kinds where people travel through time and they're observing the butterfly effect in the fact that they're like, don't touch anything, don't mess with anything, right? Because the smallest little change that you make at that one time can have massive ramifications for the future of everything. Um, and I mean, first of all, I've always thought that that was a little bit ridiculous. The assertion that, like, okay, like if you time travel, period, you're messing with stuff, right? So it's not like I think it's you're kind of missing the whole point of the butterfly effect if you think that you can somehow mitigate or improve upon the outcome by doing less. Yeah, exactly, right? So first that always kind of bothered me, but beyond that, I think we get into this notion of determinism, or like is is the universe just this writhing mass of particles moving in random directions and just kind of effecting itself emergently in every moment? Or okay, all right, so you believe that. Well, because I was gonna say the other option is that, like, the chaos can be explained and calculated precisely, and therefore, if you were to map it accurately enough, it would in fact not be random at all, but it would be a carefully orchestrated series of occurrences. Yeah, yeah. Sure. Well, what let's talk about that then. Let's talk about that because I think okay, I think that kind of gets down to the crux of the issue here is that if you have a simulation which is linear, then the tiniest change. So what I mean by that is a simulation in which there's no flexibility of outcome, in which every point in that simulation is a direct result of the particular input, right? Then of course the tiniest small change will make a difference. But that's only in one kind of a model, right? So in another model, I mean, here's the simplest example. You have a bowling ball that's sitting on the table, and if an ant waltzes up and pushes on that bowling ball, it's not going to move. And the ant could try as hard as it wanted to push the bowling ball, but it wouldn't be able to move. But meanwhile, you could just walk in and give the bowling ball a tap and it would start rolling, right? So the butterfly effect would have very little to no effect on the bowling ball, whereas you would have a profound effect on the bowling ball in that particular simulation. And so what it makes me wonder is like does it just all depend on the sensitivity of that particular system, on the particular input that's required to effect a noticeable change in that particular system, right? It could be, I mean, it could just be a matter of scale. Like, for example, the ant pushing on that bowling ball might have a profound effect on the molecules or on the cells inside the ant, right? Yeah. Yeah, you did. We're good, we're good. It probably wouldn't though, right? I mean, like, in real life, it wouldn't, I think. Okay. Lay it on us. Mm. Mhm. Mm. So, to me, what I take away from that is that we ultimately have no way of knowing whether a butterfly flapping its wings would create a tornado halfway across the world, right? Mhm. Mm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I suppose if you stop to okay, so if you accept the fact that everything in the universe as far as we know it is in a certain amount of motion, right? Would you say that that's a fairly accurate statement? Let's let's assume based based on what we seem to know about the way the universe works, it seems to be a collection of moving particles, right? So if that is the case, right, exactly. And so if we accept that notion, which it seems to me like is a largely accepted notion in physics at the moment, then I guess, you could say that every motion does matter, right? Like every molecule moving through every atom moving through the universe has an effect. And no matter how small, and that if so it could be that that ant pushing on that bowling ball, maybe it doesn't change any particular system that our naked human eye can see, other than just that the ant was on one side versus the other on that particular day. But it could be that it's having a profound effect just on a scale that we're not really paying attention to. So that's, so when you start to think about it like that, like the title is rather grandiose in thinking that you could have such a different scale of effect. Yeah, right. Well, that's that's what I wonder about, That's the part that I wonder about is like, is that really the case? I mean, I suppose so. Like if the ant is imperceptibly moving the bowling ball, and that is imperceptibly moving the molecules in the air, and those molecules as a result are doing something slightly different than what they ordinarily would have done. Maybe. But this is where I'm getting hung up, right? Is again, it's like I think that that could break down. Like for example, if let's say you drop a drop of water into a bucket, right? Let's say you drop it in on the left side versus the right side. okay, it's gonna have like a minor effect on the water in that bucket. Is it really gonna affect anything else? You know, especially if that's a closed room, if the windows are closed, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I mean, yes, it will affect the system in that room, right? But I wonder though. I wonder because again, it's like we're talking about linear predictable systems created by humans because like our systems are going to be by definition linear because you know we create them with a certain set of parameters, right? I think the supposition that the universe has to obey the same rules that our simulations do, I think is a little it's got some hubris in it. Like what I I think that it's entirely possible that part of the chaotic nature of the universe operates on thresholds. That's kind of what I'm getting at here. Is that yes, things affect other things, but you know, um, if the bowling ball doesn't move by the ant, then it hasn't passed a certain threshold, and so the effect of that thing it might be confined to a certain space that it otherwise wouldn't have been, right? So that's kind of what I'm wondering is if these calculations of force obey certain thresholds. And you know, I mean, what do I know, right? I mean, it's maybe people have contemplated this in their models, but to me, that kind of seems like one of those things where I could easily see physics working with certain internal tolerances that our models don't easily comprehend, especially in scale, right? Maybe there's something that works out on our planetary scale, but it doesn't actually work out universally for whatever because of certain thresholds, right? Maybe there's a electromagnetic interference which prevents small things on our planet from having an effect outside of our planet, just like there's this kind of mass differential that prevents the ant from actually moving the bowling ball. So this is what I'm thinking about, right? Are there certain limits imposed on these models just based on different amounts of force clearing different thresholds? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, it's something to consider, right? Hmm. Does it? I you know, I'm struggling with this. I think that this is as much uh the result of humans applying their own notion of causality to the universe as it appears to them as anything. I think that it uh, I definitely think that that's possible, yes. And I mean, clear. I can't speak with authority. I mean, who can, especially around stuff like this? We're all kind of primitive in our understanding of the way the universe works, but I think it's one of these things. Like, I think it's one of these places where the romanticism of just a certain kind of feeling that people have, like, yeah, man, it's all connected, it's all a system, or as far as you want to get as well towards that whole notion of like spirituality or godliness, right? Mm, mhm. Okay, okay, yeah, okay. Definitely, yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah, okay. So the limit is simply in our ability to trace the effect. Which this brings us to kind of like an impossible, we are by definition in unknown territory here. Like when you say the limit. Well, I like your statement, Robin, because I think it is at its basis very true. The limit of the effect, the effect of things that we can trace is limited to the effect that we can perceive, right? And I think that if more people acknowledge that simple truth, I think that we would have a bit more honesty overall in the various sciences. Because I think that there's just something very simple and profound about that, and I totally agree that the effects of things are wider than we know. That just seems true to me. I mean, it's just folly to assume that you're perceiving everything. You're not. Um, so I like that. Yeah, yeah, Mm. So so you're saying that the statistics become more accurate than whatever models we've set up. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so one thing that I like about the pandemic as an example is that while it is very unpredictable ultimately just due to our ignorance about the full effects of the virus and the incubation periods, the possibility of reinfection, the number of symptoms that can occur, the number of consequences that can occur. I mean, there's so much we don't know about it. But one of the things that I like about these virus simulations is that I think there's a lot that we do know. There's a lot that we understand about the way that disease spreads. There's a lot that we can look to in history. There's a lot that we know about human behavior. And so even if we can't predict, maybe there's some super mutation of the bug that we can't predict, or maybe a certain nation's policy, either their domestic or foreign policy, throws a total wrench in the works and something else happens, right? But I think that we can apply some pretty useful models, which don't have to be particularly accurate, to illustrate and help us create a meaningful change in the spread of the virus. And I think that this is a really good example of where models are useful is is not in calculating specific outcomes, but in helping to direct us towards general outcomes. And I think the weather's a really good example of that too, right? Because we're just not going to know what the weather's going to be like perfectly tomorrow, but our general knowledge of the season and our statistics and the current models that we're working with, they still give us some useful information to go on. Yeah, yeah. Mm, mhm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I it's probably time for us to get moving here soon, but I just want to finish out with, and it's funny actually because I feel like I am playing the foil in this particular episode, but I just want for the listener to consider. I hope so. I sure hope so. I just want for the listener to consider that it's okay to feel skeptical about this idea. Like, I think the ripples in the pond is a great example. It could be that you drop something in a pond, the ripples move to the edge of the pond, they hit the edge of the pond, they stop, and that's it. You know, done. Right. Um, and it's not okay. Like, it's not that that's not going to have an effect, right? Like, here's another example. Let's say an eagle screams in the middle of the forest. No humans hear it. But as a result of that scream, certain smaller animals get scared and they start doing different stuff, right? And then maybe, well, I'm spreading disinformation, Robin. Um, but what I'm getting at here is like it matters. It matters as much as it matters. You know what I'm saying? Like sure, I'm not saying that it's not changing things, right? But I don't necessarily. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that every every leaf that falls off a tree affects the New York stock market 50 years from now. You know what I mean? It's like it maybe, maybe that causes a series of events. Maybe that causes, let's say the eagle screams and then a little animal runs away and then a panther chases it down and ends up in someone's backyard that otherwise wouldn't have, and that scares someone and they have a heart attack and yada yada. Like all that stuff can happen, right? So I'm not saying that it's not all of these things that absolutely possible, but it's just like I'm also down for the possibility that like the eagle screams, it affects, this small range of animals in the middle of nowhere. And, and that does have a profound effect within a certain radius of that thing happening. But, like we no none of us knew about it. It doesn't matter. Right. Um, and I'm just like, I'm down for that possibility. You know what I mean? Like, I'm down for the possibility that yeah. 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 I I think that's well said. Yeah. Yep. That's good point, Robin. I accept. Yeah. Well, tune in next time to find out what's different about Listening Glass podcast. It's been a pleasure chatting with you again, Robin. Yeah, let's do it. Take care out there in the world.